is our long Prezi for COM 280. Our study was conducted to find whether or not physical activity has a direct correlation with academic success, with Derek Hales, Avery Landon, Marilyn Wild, Jackie Waite, and Allie Brinkeroff.
So first we want to talk about how we conducted our experiment. We set up a survey on Qualtrics and emailed it out to about 300 random students from BYU-Idaho. We got 50 responses, and these are the questions we asked. So we asked, what is your GPA? And we got about roughly about 30 answers from that, and the other 20 decided not to answer. The other questions were, on average, how much time do you spend on physical activity per week? What activities would you say you participated in for your physical activities? Some other questions that we asked is, how much time do you spend studying per week? How would you rate the effectiveness of the time you spend studying? And how much free time would you say you have on a weekly basis? Some other questions were, what activities do you participate in? On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate the effectiveness of the time you spent on physical activities? And then on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you say physical activity has a positive effect on your academic success? All of these questions help answer our meta question. So here are the findings. The first finding from our research was the effectiveness of time students spend studying. Being able to identify students' correlation to physical exercise and academic performance can be very difficult to measure and see similarities. Using a survey can help show effective results and give more in-depth data that allows more clear understandings. A survey was chosen for this specific case, and studies show positive results. A survey was sent to around 300 students attending Brigham and University-Idaho, and around 50 students responded. The first finding taken from the survey at Brigham Young University-Idaho looks at one study that was conducted looking at the effectiveness of the time students spent studying. Students were given the opportunity to reflect and answer how effective their time spent studying was on a scale from 1 to 10. Overall, the majority average of the results showed that 6.74 were the most time spent for the effective time spent studying. This suggests a positive correlation to students who feel their study time is effective. In relation to the meta question, does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success? This study further examines this question and gives results in detailed form, allowing individuals to examine and better understand how students feel their effectiveness of time spent studying really is. This study can help show that students who choose to study more effectively and utilize time better also have more drive to exercise. Being able to set aside some time to exercise also has a correlation to study harder, test better, and achieve higher overall academic performance.
Our second finding answered the question, does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success? This finding examines the GPA of survey participants versus weekly hours of physical activity. This question relates to the meta question, does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success? Examining the GPA of current Brigham Young University-Idaho students to the practice of physical exercise is difficult to pinpoint and examine. After analyzing the survey, conclusions show that students who chose to exercise not only perform better academically, but have a better overall GPA. Many students chose not to show their current GPA but offered to disclose time spent exercising. After analyzing the survey, results show that those who disclose their current grade point average fall into the 3.0 grade point average. This suggests a positive finding that allows further explanation to the meta question, does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success? Looking at the actual time spent conducting physical exercise, 2.93 hours was the overall time students claim they spent exercising each week. Being able to set aside time to exercise proves to help raise academic performance and overall grade point average. Conclusions can be made that if students will set aside an allotted time to exercise in some way, they have better success rate at effective study and overall performance. Students who chose to disclose their overall grade point average also show success in time they spent exercising.
Based upon the results of this finding, it is suggested that students think that physical activity has a direct correlation with academic success. This is our third finding, which asked, in the opinion of students, physical activity does have a direct correlation with academic success. This question was posed in a survey. There was a scale between 0 and 10 that allowed students to answer whether they think physical activity impacted academic success. 0 on the scale represented very ineffective, and 10 represented very effective. Most of the answers to this question fell between an 8 and 10 effectiveness. There were other answers, but six of the answers from the students were above a level 4 effectiveness. One student did not answer this question. In another comparison, the student also answered a very low effectiveness on the time they spend doing some physical activity. Other findings show that the opinion of students is that physical activity does have a direct correlation with academic success. Something else that this finding answers is the meta question, as well as the research question of, in the opinion of the students, does physical activity have a direct correlation with the academic success? This finding directly correlates to the study in the fact that it answers the questions. To further this research in the future, if the study were to be repeated, it would be expected to gain more data. This survey was sent out to 300 students and only 50 responded, as was mentioned before. This would help with the results of this finding.
Finding 4, average amount of time spent on physical activity a week. An important aspect of the meta question, does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success, was to determine a solid number or statistic to look at to determine actual number of hours per week that Brigham Young University-Idaho students spent exercising. Out of all the 50 students who participated in the survey sent out, an average of 4.75 was discovered to be the number of average hours spent a week conducting physical exercise. Students who chose to exercise also had an overall higher grade point average and tested more effectively. The discovered number of 4.75 suggests moderately positive results when analyzing the usage of time spent exercising and correlating that to productive academic performance. Studies show that people who are driven by personal goals, discipline, and determination tend to be physically motivated to keep and maintain their physical physique and thus succeeding and improving in academic performance. Lack of motivation and bad eating habits is another study that shows decreased desire of time spent a week conducting physical activity and exercise. Brigham Young University-Idaho students who answered the survey were asked several questions regarding physical activity, time spent on homework, and what activities they considered to be named or called exercising. However, these results of 4.75 show more details and specific results that allow sufficient results from analyzing average time spent on a week on physical activity.
Our fifth and final finding was that 70% of students at BYU-Idaho say that exercise has a positive effect on their studies from our survey. Possibly one of the most important aspects to look at is that to see how these students feel about exercise related to their studies. After analyzing our survey results that was sent out to 300 Brigham Young University-Idaho students, 50 of the students chose to respond. And out of that group, 70% claimed that the participation in physical exercise does have a believed positive effect on their studies and overall academic performance. This suggests that students who take time to participate in physical exercise will succeed in their overall academic performance and will more likely work harder in a post-college program or career. The majority of students who answered this survey and looked at the options feel that physical exercise does help academic performance at Brigham Young University-Idaho.
So does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success? Yes, it does.
To explain this further, we wanted to say that our study set out to find a positive correlation between time students spend on studying and physical activity each week to academic success. The survey that we sent out asked questions that would determine what students deem as exercise, how often they perform these activities, how often they study, and if they believed there was a direct correlation between the two. Of the 50 students who responded, the findings show that BYU-Idaho students have confidence in relationship between physical activity and academic success. The first finding identified the academic devotion of the students surveyed. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being low and 10 being high, they were asked to define how effective they view their study time to be. The average showed that students felt that their study time was nearly 68% effective. This number shows that students are devoted to their academics. After we determined that our student population was loyal in their academic endeavors, we needed to find out if they were physically active. The survey results showed that all who responded to our question of whether their weekly exercise, if they had weekly exercise, had a GPA of 3.0 or above. The results also revealed that those students were spending an average of 4.75 hours per week on their physical activity. Our survey results exhibit a relationship between high academic results of BYU-Idaho students and their time spent studying, but we were also curious if they believed there was a relationship amongst the two. Possibly one of the most important aspects of the meta question, does physical activity have a direct correlation with academic success, would be to look at what % of Brigham Young University-Idaho students feel the use of physical exercise has a positive correlation to studies and overall grade point average. 70% of students who answered this survey and looked at the options feel that physical exercise does improve their academic performance at Brigham Young University-Idaho. Other students infer that physical fitness, such as setting aside time each week to conduct physical exercise, helps stimulate brain activity. It can be gathered that the students who currently attend Brigham Young University-Idaho support those similar claims and studies as true and believe that physical activity does indeed have a direct correlation with academic success.